This is a video for the Pandafold alpha users for version 0.6.1, walking through some of the changes and some of the things to know for the next release here. So the big thing you'll notice is the materials view. So there's a new view here which shows you the materials used on the model, including the pile thickness or the fabric thickness. You can switch between this and the distortion view by just clicking one of these icons up here. This is still got a fair number of bugs in it. It does work. The big thing to know is that each individual pattern has its own display mode. So when you see a pattern being displayed in a way that you may not expect, that's really the issue with it. And you can just flip back and forth to force it to change the display mode. The material settings and how this is configured in the materials view. So each material has an ID that's printed on the patterns. So you want to keep these IDs short but useful. So if you name these things that are really long, then what will happen is the pattern text layout engine won't be able to figure out how to lay the patterns out, and will probably just discard the ID and give up on trying to display it. The other metadata here is for your usage. I like to have a build sheet for what I'm working on so that I know the details of the materials, but I then also have a record to share with the customer. So that's why all of this stuff is here. Eventually, as part of the PDF that's generated out of printing this, you'll be able to print a build sheet telling you the fabrics that were used and the length of the fabric and the other details. But from a displaying the materials here, the big things to know are the display color is what's used to display the color there. And then it's a combination of the backer thickness and the pile length for displaying the material in this view. Along with that, you can also, in this view now, in the layout view, display the materials. So if you want to toggle them off and get the monochrome view that existed before, you can, or you can turn them on. And then when you go ahead and you print these, which is really just saving to a PDF at the moment, you will get a view of this view here of the PDF. You'll get all the colors associated with all the patterns in the printouts. And the reason for this is so that if you have a color printer, you don't have to sort the patterns by looking at the printed materials that are on them. You can just look at the color and know immediately that you're assembling things like you expected. So that's the big like UI changes to know about in this release. The way you can set materials with a pattern, you can do it in 3 different ways. So let's go create a new pattern here. And we can set the material when we cut the pattern. So in one motion, if the material is selected up here, in one motion, you can cut the pattern, set the grain line, that's what the arrow here indicates, and the pattern is selected down here on the new pattern that's cut. On the new pattern that's cut, that's set here. You can also, and some of this is a bit buggy, you can use this tool here, the material paint tool. I'm not sure that icon's the best choice, but that's where we're at. And you can paint the material that way. So then if I go back here, you'll see that material here. I still need to do some work on getting all of this stuff to refresh as you're working with it, but that's the next way you can set the material. And lastly, you can select it from the list down here. And again, this didn't refresh. I'm not sure why. If you wanted to change the view for an individual pattern, you can say show as and show it as a distortion map. So you could have a mixed view. I'm probably going to get rid of that and just make it either all distortion map or all materials view, and probably allow you to toggle the grain lines on the material view along with the material thickness. If you want to change the grain line after you've set it, you can use this tool here to just click and set a new grain line. So that way you can orient the fabric however you want. And the way this is displayed in the layout view here is an arrow next to the pattern ID. So we're going to talk about the pattern IDs next here. So you'll see this arrow here that indicates that when you lay this pattern out on a piece of fabric, you would orient it in whatever way you've decided that means this arrow makes sense for you. In my case, I usually have the arrow point in the direction of the pile. So that's why I have this set up that way, or that's why when you look at the model here, all the arrows tend to go in that direction. An interesting thing to know, which yeah, let's see if we can show this. So when you're cutting here, the grain lines, if you have darts, so this piece here, if I go back here and select this, that is. But by the way, the select tool up here allows you to click on anything on the model, and it will select it in the tree. It's still not jumping to the item in the tree. You need to add that. But it tells us this is pattern 4, um, and you'll see the darts here. If we go look at pattern 4 in the layout here, which is going to be right here, you'll see the darts here, right? But an interesting thing about the grain lines is the grain line, because of that dart on the physical fabric, would change. So the more darts you have, the more you get these minor grain line misalignments. This is how it works in real life, and now you can visualize that on the model. I was really surprised to see this when I first implemented this, because I always imagined that darts would cause a bigger shift in the grain lines, and they really don't. But it's one of those things where here's an example where it kind of does. Maybe it's probably the length of the dart that makes the difference. But in this case, on the chin here, I purposefully try to avoid having my seams go up near the front of the chin, so I try to hide them on the bottom. But as the dart length increases, so does the change in the grain line increase. So in this case, this would tell you the decision that you've made to place the grain line this way or that way. Like let's say, for instance, I placed it there, like I wanted it, I placed the grain line just going back there. That's kind of fascinating to me because what it tells me is when I build this, the grain line on the chin is going to point down back that way, which may not be what you want. You may want it to be that way and take the trade-off that the grain line now is going to go away from the center line or the symmetry line of the model. So this is just something to think about. It's kind of this new capability to visualize this that may have been harder to understand in the past if you were patterning with duct tape. So we were talking briefly about the pattern IDs. The other huge change here, and this still needs work here, is that the seam alignment mark engine, I rewrote that. It took me a couple of days to rewrite that. So in this layout view, you can turn on different ways to look at the connections. So this means no connections, don't show anything. This means show only for the selected pattern. And this means show everything. So that is a view of all the connections for this particular model. I started laying this out to try to make sense, but at some point, because it's a 3D model translated to 2D, it just becomes too complex to lay all the stuff out in a way in the two-dimensional view that makes sense. But let's go back to looking at just this individual connections here. So for this individual pattern, we have the ID. So this is pattern 6, and the arrow points in the grain line direction. Each pattern is given some name. So if you go over here, and I think we were looking at 6 here. So you can set the name here. So and as we go back here, you'll see that now that pattern is labeled my part. And the pattern is also, so it has the part name on it, or the pattern name on it, the material that's used, and then the seam IDs. This text layout is all done automagically. It was a whole lot of work to write this algorithm, but I personally didn't want to be dragging text around to just make all of this work. So this will sit here and just try a whole bunch of different layouts until it arrives at something that works. And it will change the font sizes and locations and rotation of all the text except for the ID, since the arrow is one that needs to stay the same. The patterns or the seam markers here, each seam is assigned a unique ID. So this seam is BG, and then this is the pattern that it connects to. So seam BG connects to pattern 15, and here's pattern 15 on seam BG. So as you're assembling this, you should be able to quickly and easily figure out how the patterns are associated with each other. I was saying earlier that the seam alignment engine has been rewritten. It's a dramatic improvement. It's both more robust and more accurate. So the past one had some issues lining up um, the end of pattern marks, and I rewrote that and spent a lot of time working on that. And I feel it's a lot better. It still does have some issues. So this is an example where an issue has come out where you have these two seams here, and because of the darts, the seam alignment engine didn't get this right, so I'll have to go back and fight with some of that. Um, so yeah, this needs work. I still will have to account for that, but it's a dramatic improvement from what was going on in the past. The I, the other things to know about are that the IDs associated with patterns are created automatically. So if you cut a new pattern, you will see that this is given automatically the ID 51. But if I delete that pattern and I cut it again, you will see that I'm given yet another ID and 52, and these IDs are not continuous. So they as you undo things and redo them, you end up with some pretty large pattern IDs. And as these get into the hundreds, you may not want to deal with that. So you can now go up here, and if you were to click on the model, which you can get to here or through the model menu, you can reset the pattern IDs. So now that pattern, instead of being 51, is going to be 49 or whatever it is here. I think those are the big things that are new and exciting about this release. So if you watch this video and you're not an alpha user and you're wondering how to become an alpha user, so we're only right now working with a few people before our next convention, just because just got so much stuff going on. But if you're interested in becoming an alpha user, feel free to reach out to us and ask. We're looking for people who are actively patterning stuff frequently, so we get a lot of feedback as we continue to improve the software. Anyways, thanks for watching.